in the 1970s, Ronald Reagan took all of the North Coast rivers off the table for the State Water Project when he made them wild and scenic rivers under the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. And they are off the table both in terms of the state and the federal government. There's a federal Wild and Scenic Rivers Act and a state Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. So they're pretty much off the table. And in 1982, the voters took the peripheral canal off the table. Jerry Brown did not want it to go to a vote, but it did, and it was soundly defeated. So the state cannot deliver its original 4.23 million acre feet because a lot of the supply was removed. Now, they have not taken that out of the contracts, however, and that is a huge problem because the expectations are that there will be all this water because that's what the contracts say. And we would like the contracts to reflect what's really there. Part of the problem with the Monterey Amendments is that they threw that safety valve, it's known as Article 18B, out of the contracts. That was one of the things the amendments did. And what that means is that the full amount must stay in the contract. It can't be reduced down to reflect the true firm yield, safe yield of the project. Now, in the case of Santa Barbara, we're in a really bad way because when there is water in the State Water Project and they can actually deliver it, we have no place to put it because Lake Cachuma is our storage and it contains the local supply. So if we have enough water, there's no place to put the State Water Project water because if Lake Cachuma spills, it's the first water over the dam. So, and then in times of drought, the state doesn't have water to give us, so we can't get what we need. So it's a lose-lose for Santa Barbara and always has been, and that's one of the main problems. And that's why I believe that for the South Coast, the four South Coast water agencies, it's imperative that we stop depending on the State Water Project and look more to our local sources like our desalination plant and possibly do some reclamation, some reclamation projects that use all four of our water agencies, our coastal water agencies. So it's really, we're paying a lot of money here in Santa Barbara for a pig in a poke. We're not getting water. We're getting a lot of debt. And if the Twin Tunnels costs were added to that debt, it could very likely bankrupt our water agencies. And if they go into default, it is incumbent on our Santa Barbara Board of Supervisors, this is part of the contract, the Santa Barbara Board of Supervisors must levy taxes, property taxes, to collect the money to pay this debt. So my question is, property tax owners of Santa Barbara, do you want to be on the hook for paying huge debt with no benefit? Everyone who I talk to who really understands this just is appalled. So, and I think that message needs to get out here in Santa Barbara especially because the Twin Tunnels will not bring us any more water. We don't need the Twin Tunnels water when it can give us water because there's no place to put it. And when we do need it, the state's in drought and it can't deliver anyway. So we need to get smart and do something else. So that's the State Water Project.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Jill, you had a question or two.
Yeah, so it sounds like, Carolee, that the State Water Project is, the whole intent and purpose is to move fresh water from the northern part of the state to the
Yes.
southern part of the state.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And then you talked a little bit about the contractual agreements, for example, with Santa Barbara.
Yes.
You mentioned before in a different conversation the take or pay
Yes.
aspect of the contract. Can you talk a little bit about
Yes. Take or pay contracts are very common in with utility contracts, and they are part of the State Water Project contract language. Take or pay means that you must pay whether you get any of the commodity or not. And in this case, it's water. So that's why we must pay all of the fixed costs for the revenue bonds, whether we get a drop of water or not. That's why in 2014, here in Montecito where I live, an acre foot of water, which from Lake Cachuma costs about $200, from the State Water Project for what we got costs over $30,000. So that's why we had to pay that, because we had a take or pay contract. Now, there's something that's really interesting that most people don't know, and that is that the Metropolitan Water District, which is the largest State Water Project contractor, does not have take or pay contracts with its subcontractors, including the City of Los Angeles and the City of San Diego. Those are the two largest ones. But because it does not have take or pay contracts, we believe that the Metropolitan Water District itself could be its financial situation could be very shaky, and it may have to revert to collecting property taxes from everyone in order to pay the bill. And I don't think the people in Los Angeles or San Diego understand this very well. I think that needs to get out there, the take or pay aspect of these contracts, or the lack of them in the case of the Metropolitan Water District.
Can you talk a little bit about the groups of people? You mentioned the ratepayers, that they would be impacted. Are there other specific groups,
In Santa Barbara?
just in general,
In general.
in California, that would be heavily impacted by
The tunnels?
the tunnels?
The groups that are most heavily impacted by the costs of the tunnels at this point are the urban water ratepayers. And what's very interesting to me is that the Central Valley Project is supposed to be a partner with the State Water Project on paying for these tunnels. At this point, there's no surety that the Central Valley Project will be a partner. And what I've heard floated is maybe 60% State Water Project, 40% Central Valley Project ratio. But whatever, it's become clearer and clearer that the agricultural interests don't believe that it's a good investment for them, these twin tunnels. And they want the urban folks to pay for the whole thing. So they're going to try very hard to get that to happen. And the urban folks need to be strong and understand agriculture uses 80% of the water. They provide 2% of the gross domestic product for California, and they want us to subsidize them. I think it's clear we should not do that.
You also mentioned people with senior water rights.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes.
And how that feeds into
Senior water rights are, the concept in law goes back, the concept in law goes back to the time of the gold miners, and it was further developed by the cattle ranchers. Senior water rights mean that if you're an appropriator, it means that you were the first in time, the first in line to get that water as a claim. And that gives you priority over people who claimed the water later. And it's very important to remember that by 1914, pretty much all of the water had been claimed in California. And that's why they had to form the State Water Resources Control Board, to sort out those claims. They've never really done an adjudication to actually sort out those claims, but the state board has continued to grant more and more claims. And in 1928 or 29, it was the Central Valley Project and the State Water Project claims that were granted back then. And so they are among the most junior claimants in this very oversubscribed system. And so senior water rights, that's why there's going to be a lot of fighting when it comes to an adjudication process through the courts with a water master, with a judge who understands all of this. And it's going to take years, but until we do that, the environment, and it's got to be done with a public trust analysis to give the environment a seat at the table. That's what, I don't want to have this adjudication done unless there's a public trust analysis done, or the environment will get left out. And that would be disastrous in my opinion. So it's imperative that all of this gets sorted out. It can only happen in a court, and we must have accurate information in order to do it right.
It sounds to me that the public trust doctrine is supporting the environment, and it's also not, anti-development. It's really
Yes.
about having balance.
Absolutely. The public trust doctrine is about balance. What we have to do, though, is to make sure that the balance includes the environment. That's what's been left out up until this point. There are a lot of environmental impact reports done and a lot of analysis done, but there's no economic value given to the public trust assets that are environmental. And that's why all these species are on the endangered species list, and that's why there's been such a problem. And the San Joaquin River, for example, 50 miles is dry most years, and that's not how it should be. We're in very precarious times. We have a Democratic governor who's pushing the twin tunnels for all he's worth, and we have a Republican president who is set to gut the Endangered Species Act. And the reason it's key that CWIN is at this place right now is because we're not using any of that. We're using the public trust doctrine. They can't touch us. If we can get the public trust analysis done with Eco Northwest. Now, Eco Northwest are the expert of experts. They were the experts in the Exxon Valdez case, in the Hudson River PCB case, and currently in the Gulf Oil BP case. We couldn't have better experts, and they're eager to do this because they feel it's their way to give back. So what they're willing to do is for a lot less than if they were being hired by a government agency to do the work. So they're partnering with us to get this work done. My job is to at least raise some funds to pay them to do this work. But we are the last line in the sand here because of what's going on with this Democratic governor in California and what's going on with the Republican president in the White House. We have got to save all of the rivers that are at stake and the species, and we can. We have standing, we have comments on with every agency where it's necessary, and we can get this job done with your help.